Hey everyone! Welcome to this week's recap podcast for SNXweave. We made it through the first week of the new epic. If you're a new listener, SNXweave is a grants DAO initiative to improve communication and transparency across the synthetics ecosystem. We'll be giving quick weekly recaps of news and important updates from the Spartan Council and core contributors. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the status of several SIPs, and an interesting conversation related to governance participation. So let's get started. First off, Optimism's upgrade is coming up. It's scheduled to go up on Kovan on October 14th and mainnet on the 28th. Justin says for shorting on L2, however, we don't want to wait for Optimism's regenesis and would rather just get it going as soon as possible. There was a problem with the current Optimism setup with the transpiler that ended up requiring a lot of extra code and running out of gas. However, Mark and Daniel were able to work through this and fix it, so this is now up on Kovan. SIP 135 will go out on the L2 specific Sargass release, hopefully being pushed forward in the next few days. It will be great to have support for shorting BTC, ETH, and Link on L2. Mark also says the Wrapper Factory SIP is progressing well, and that him and Daniel are just fixing the integration tests before sending it to audit. A new SIP was discussed this week, SIP 187, to fix partial synth updates in debt cache. This SIP, proposed by Jackson, recommends upgrading the debt cache contract to fix an issue with partial synth updates so the cache debt is updated after minting and burning SUSD. This SIP is still in draft, however the Council hopes to see some movement and get it out in a week or so. The Atomic Exchange Function SIP is in the process of being implemented, as Brett has deployed another version of the exchange rates contract that simulates what SIP 120 would be. Caleb and Brett are continuing to do sandbox testing here. Justin says the code for the L2 Bridge Governance SIP is pretty much ready to go. There's just been a last bit of information from the auditors to apply before it's ready. However, this SIP is being pushed back in favor of implementing L2 shorting first. Justin also said he's been working with Andre on a solution for SIP 171, which will allow transfer of non-fee reclamation balances, as it looks like it's going to require 5 to 10% more gas. He hopes to have more information on this next week. The Dynamic Exchange Fee SIP was approved last week with 6 votes in favor and none against. Fief says Daniel, Lecky, and Mark are in the process of trying to simplify implementation, and that they are aiming to have it compute exchange fees on the fly for every exchange using Chainlink price history. Lastly, for the SIP updates, there's been some additional internal testing on the Futures SIP, with hopes to get it up on Kovan soon. However, Justin says there's been some back and forth regarding how to handle the upcoming regenesis, as they would risk losing all of the history when Optimism updates if Futures is implemented now. The hope is to, therefore, line Futures up with Optimism's regenesis on Kovan next week. During the meeting, Caleb also started an interesting discussion about how we can increase governance participation. This sparked some interesting ideas, such as Big Penny suggesting an add-on role for the Synthetics Guardians to seek potential governance candidates and serve in a mentor-type capacity for those new to governance. Mike emphasized that we need to replenish the Guardians, seeing as how many of the existing ones are now involved in the various DAOs. Justin noted that this is a good conversation to be having, and that it would be worth bringing it to a public session with the community. And that's it for today's updates. Be sure to check out our weekly blog post, share this podcast link, and let us know what you think and what you'd like to hear more about from SNXweave. Thanks for listening.